Cancer. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for June of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas in Pioneer, California.
Well, Cancer, if this is your sun sign, not your rising sign, then your birthday is approaching rather quickly. You're already in your yearly mop-up period as this month begins, and that's the 30 days before your birthday. And the sooner you can get your annual birthday reading, the better, because if you can have it before your birthday, you're going to be really well equipped for your year. And if you want a link for that, it's in the YouTube description below. Well, I want to tell you about some slower moving planets today. Oops, that's the wrong screen share. Let me get the right screen share. Here we go. I keep doing that. Let me fix it. There's the right screen. Okay. So I want to tell you about a couple of planets that are moving slowly, but doing noteworthy things this month. We have Saturn, which begins the month in Aquarius and will turn retrograde this month. And that happens on June 4. Right here, you can see it happen. Boom, there's Saturn goes retrograde. And Saturn is busily bringing discipline to your 8th house life arena over a 2.5-year period. Now, I can't tell you in a horoscope specifically when that begins and finishes. You'd have to get a reading to find that out. But let me tell you how it feels so that you can identify whether you might already be involved in this. Saturn, like I said, brings discipline and structure. It can make you feel limited, constricted, restricted, like you've got to work harder than usual in an area that it's passing through. The 8th house is a house of psychological depth. It is a house of death and rebirth, profound change. This is a house of sharing, and that means financially and also emotionally. In other words, this is a house of intimacy. And so you're being tested in your intimate relationships. Are you able to trust other people? Do you know how to trust other people? Or do you just simply make a black and white decision about whether to trust people? How are you doing in your relationship with a spouse, for example? And how are your shared finances with that spouse? And in what ways do maybe those shared finances need a little work, like they're actually under construction and like going into them and getting a little bit more rigorous with how you and your spouse agree on and conduct your shared finances? That is what this transit is really for. And if you've ever been a business partner or had a business partner, then you know that business partnership feels an awful lot like marriage. And so everything I'm saying applies to that kind of relationship too. And you can find out more about Saturn retrograde in the video that we made about it on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, in the June 2022 news playlist. Now, the other retrograde that I want to tell you about is Neptune. Neptune is traveling along this month through Pisces in your 9th house, and you'll see it goes retrograde late in the month, about on the 28th. And yep, there it is. It's retrograde. And Neptune is a dreamer and visionary and artist, a compassionate and empathic side of us that tends to build beautiful castles in the air wherever she goes, but this can also come with some delusion and fantasy and experiences of disappointment as you discover that the dreams are not viable. Neptune spends a long time passing through a life area like your 9th house. It's usually going to spend about 14 years there. And again, a reading is the best place to discover exactly when it entered and when it's going to leave. But suffice it to say, the 9th house being a house of the bigger picture of your life and how you find resilience through a worldview that brings meaning to your life, whether that worldview comes through a religion that you participate in, or a spiritual path that you participate in, or just a view that you have of the world that incorporates some core principles, like science, for example. And Neptune's passage along this house has been redreaming and revisioning that worldview over the long term. So this is really an era that you're going through, but you may notice some shift about it right around when Neptune turns retrograde. And this year it's doing that on June 28th. So to find out more about Neptune and Mercury both, check out that video that I mentioned is on our YouTube channel, and it's also on our monthly forecast page at the website pandoraastrology.com. I want to also just mention super briefly that last month, May of 2022, I talked about Jupiter passing through your 10th house this year. It spends a year per house, and it is bringing you an absolutely fantabulous career luck period that you should know about so that you can optimize it. It might be your best chance in about a 12-year period to make a move in your career. So check out your May horoscope for that part. Hey, Julia, you've got Mercury, Venus, and Mars news for the Cancers of the world. What's that good stuff?
A lot of things to look forward to, Cancer. Well, one good thing is that Mercury is finally going direct this month. It went retrograde last month. The bulk of its retrograde cycle happened then. And Mercury, since it represents communication, it represents your mind. When it goes retrograde, it kind of muddies the waters in those areas of life. And they tend to be times of redo and review, as well as miscommunications too. So by June 3rd, Mercury is going to go direct in your 11th house. And it's also important to remember that when Mercury either pivots retrograde or direct, it's not like a switch is being switched on or off, but there's actually a little bit of lead up and resolution period after this. So about a week after the 3rd, Mercury is going to be in its shadow period as it slowly starts moving a little bit more quickly. But basically the Mercury is going to be going direct this month. So you've probably gone through some having Mercury retrograde in the 11th house, some miscommunications with friends, or perhaps with any groups that you're a part of. Maybe it's been a time where you've been reviewing your life goals and are wondering, like, should these still be my life goals? How do I get to them? Do I need to sort of switch things up? But with Mercury moving direct, all of these matters are going to be moving a lot better. And then by the 13th, Mercury's going to enter your 12th house. Now, the 12th house is a very, very hidden, deep house. It's the last house of the zodiac. And it can represent our subconscious. It can represent spirituality and altruism. And it's also known as the house of self-undoing if we're not being attentive. So with Mercury entering the 12th house, you might be a lot more inclined to keep your thoughts and ideas to yourself because, this is kind of a little hidden private part of the zodiac. Mercury in the 12th house might mean that a lot of great ideas and connections that you might make come from very ethereal places. Like this could be a time where you have maybe some ideas are coming up in your dream states. Meditation can be great for that too. And Mercury in the 12th can be a little bit tricky if you're not being upfront and honest with people. If you feel a little inclined to kind of be a bit deceptive in your communications with others, this is not the time to do it, because when that kind of stuff happens in the 12th house, it tends to kind of create more issues for you. So it's definitely a time to try to be as beyond reproach in your communications with others as possible. Now, the other planet that I really always love to mention, because she represents beauty, relationships, pleasure, harmony. So really lots of good stuff that everyone's into, is Venus. And she's super strong this month in the sign of Taurus. She's moving along fast and direct while other planets have gone retrograde around this time. And Jamie and I actually did a video on our monthly videos about all the retrograde cycles we're going through right now. So you should also check that out, because because it wasn't just Mercury, but also Neptune and Saturn. But, you know, Venus is moving fast and direct. She starts the month in your 11th house of friends and groups. So she's adding a lot of luck and harmony and pleasure to your relationship with your friends. She's also perhaps adding a little bit of luck to your future goals. So even if you've gone through a whole Mercury retrograde cycle in the 11th, trying to, you know, maybe reviewing what your long-term goals are, Venus is also adding a little bit of support and luck. You know, so as that retrograde cycle, you know, starts to wane, Venus is kind of there at giving you a little bit of support in those areas of life. Then by June 22nd, Venus is entering your 12th house. She's following about 5 days after Mercury goes in there. And, you know, Venus in the 12th, for all the Cancers who are in a relationship, you know, the 12th is such a isolated place that you'll probably want to enjoy your partner either in kind of in sort of secluded environments, like maybe just hanging out at home together. Maybe that means going on a camping trip where there's nobody else around you for a little while. That can be really nice with Venus in the 12th house. And Venus in the 12th house, you know, this is a very spiritual, compassionate, altruistic place. So you may find that you and your partner are helping out each other, you know, maybe giving a little bit of assistance and support to one another as well. Now, I also want to say a few things about Mars. I always do. Mars is the planet of action and activity. Wherever we got him, we're usually very, very driven. That month. Mars isn't a benefic like Venus. So Mars can sometimes, he definitely has a constructive good side, but sometimes he can be a little bit frustrating as well. So Mars is spending all month in your 10th. And this is the house of authority figures. It's the house of your career or life direction in general. If other things, if you do other things that aren't necessarily professional, but they're a huge part of your life direction and purpose, they're also ruled by the 10th house. It's also your public reputation as well. So with Mars in the 10th, you know, this can be a challenging month for getting along well with authority figures, whether that's a parent or a teacher or a boss or a government official. Basically, anyone who tells you what to do would fall under the 10th house. So those people might be a little bit more irritating or challenging to deal with this month. Mars in the 10th house is great for getting a lot of work done. You know, maybe working on your reputation, working on your profession, and Mars in the 10th house, yeah, Mars is a little bit of is a very individualistic planet. So the more time you can spend this month where you work on your own projects or maybe not directly under the thumb of somebody else is probably for the best too. So you can get a lot of good work done.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about the moons, the first one being the full moon in Sagittarius happening on the 14th. This one we're calling Avoid Delusion, Head for Intellectual Solid Ground. And that's because when the sun and the moon face off in these two signs, the communication axis, it can be very much about conversations. It can be about arguments. There can be a lot of opinions and a lot of analysis. It's just very talky, this particular axis. And the influence of Neptune coming in at the square 90-degree angle to these planets sort of casts a fog over the whole thing and can raise some conversations that where at least one of the two parties is prone to some delusions. And it's a good thing that we have help from Saturn kind of grounding things and bringing in more of the logical and the rational. So because the moon falls here in your 6th house, you may be experiencing this particular full moon mostly in your work life. It may make you, per the sun in the 12th house, want to retreat to your personal life just to get away from all of that big opinionated energy that you're encountering at work. But I think that, you know, being ready to soothe people who are, you know, kind of puffing themselves up big like a puffer fish out of a need to protect their opinions, while at the same time not being able to explain those opinions very carefully. It's kind of a recipe for some upsetting conversations. And so being ready to pour oil on troubled waters at work is probably a pretty good way to handle this particular moon. Now, the next thing that I want to tell you about is that the sun moves along and changes signs. This is a seasonal change. It leaves the season of Gemini and enters the season of Cancer, which is your season. And this is just another way of saying that your birthday is coming and your birthday month is about to come. And that's for sun sign Cancers, not rising sign Cancers. And so get ready for the spotlight to land on you. And as Cancer, sun or rising, you might feel like that's an uncomfortable place to be in the spotlight. You may be, on the shy side. Cancer often is. But also, it's really great to receive some of that warm sunlight because it's nourishing. It's wonderful to be noticed and to have people celebrate you. Sometimes I think it's really wonderful to for the invisible man or woman that is the Cancer in our life to really be noticed and acknowledged and seen, and that can be a wonderful feeling. And it's really important to just let that happen during this Cancer season. And then the last thing I want to tell you about is the moon that is coming, the new moon in Cancer right here. And it does square Jupiter, but it has a wonderful harmonious trine with Vesta. And this one has a more bombastic energy, mostly because of Jupiter in Aries. It's just that brings in this quality of such like a big personality, opinionated, larger than life, and driven. And yet this moon in Cancer has a lot of sensitivity and even impressionability. And let's see, we're calling this one Ready to Explode, Seek Sacred Containment, which is to say that if in your work life, you feel like so much wants to burst out of you that others should just make room for you to expand and get bigger, that's a wonderful thing. And I think it's really important to make sure that it's not just a wonderful thing for you, but it's also a wonderful thing for everybody else in the picture. And if you're instead experiencing this coming at you from the outside, that there's somebody in your workplace who's expressing their big personality and maybe taking up more than their usual space, I think that this moon provides an out or like a release valve through this beautiful trine to Vesta, which says, bring some compassion and some empathy to the situation. And help to bridge that gap between the person who's demanding a lot of attention and those in the audience whose attention is brought to that person, whether that's you or whether it's somebody else. So that's what we have for you today, Cancer. You can always find your horoscope on our website, pandoraastrology.com, in the horoscope tab. And if anything you heard here today makes you want a reading, possibly a birthday reading, it certainly is the right time for it. You can find that in our readings tab. And we offer classes as well on our website and lots of great news on the monthly forecast tab. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye.